As soon as we go up there, we're stacked up. We do the tap. We're ready to go. Sergeant Tony comes up and he boots the door, and it's just and doesn't move. So our element of surprise is totally gone. First of all, they had already seen us coming. They heard us blow up a door next door in the compound over. And so Seth goes up to the door because Tony tried to boot it sequentially. Bam, bam, bam. So you just hear this hammering, this metal door. All of us in the second, right behind Whitfield team are like, shit, we're in the stack and this is so freaking loud. So Whitfield finally shoulders it. Turns out they stacked a wood bed frame against the door. And so as soon as Whitfield puts his shoulder into the door, it starts swinging open a little bit, and then a grenade goes right off. So Whitfield, actually, there was like three things that happened. Whitfield shot 2 shots, assuming as he comes in to the compound. And there's 2 guys to the front, AKs, just spraying, not even looking down the dang barrel, just spraying the rounds. And then there's a lady that's kind of off to a 45-degree angle near the house, and she's got a whole stack of grenades next to her, and she's just chucking them right at the door. So Whitfield gets hit with a little bit of grenade shrapnel to his arm, and then the guys that were shooting the AKs that hit in the wall right next to his night vision eye. So now he's blind. He kind of hits off to the side because the grenade went off. Diaz gets hit all up his arm. He was his saw gunner. He takes shrapnel all up his arm on his firing arm. And then Swindle was aired into the stack, and he's in the doorway. And Swindle, we're always going to make fun of Swindle, Squirtle, as we called him. It was that moment where everything is going so slow and yet so fast. So I shoulder Swindle out of the doorway, and I'm bringing up my rifle. And right as I did that, and I'm squeezing the trigger, I can see those 2 guys. I can see their teeth with the flash of the every time they're shooting a round out of their AK and they're shooting it on auto, I can see their teeth. So I'm squeezing around, and as soon as I did that, I was like, oh shit, my leg gets flung back.
Hey everybody, welcome into the Leading with Vulnerability podcast. I just want to say before we get started, yes, I realize that Russell's video is not great in the video version of this podcast, but don't let that stop you. Head over to the audio version on your favorite podcast platform and listen to this story. Russ, former Ranger turned ER traveling medical physician, Ranger infantryman to traveling ER physician. There's an amazing story in there that I think is awesome for a lot of people about his service and about how he got to where he is today. So don't quit on the podcast just because the video is a little bit bad. If you don't want to watch the bad video, I got it. Transition over to the podcast version and listen to this and share it with people. Super great story. Love Russ. Thanks for him coming on here. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Leading with Vulnerability podcast. I'm your host, Yuma Barnett, and today my guest and I, we go way back, and I don't want to say how far back because it'll age us, and it starts putting 4s and 0s and 1s and all that stuff after our age, and it's kind of unbelievable because it feels like, I could literally feels like yesterday we were 2 knuckleheads running around the streets of Savannah, Georgia, having a few cocktails and causing a ruckus, but I'm super excited to have Russell Pieper on here. He's got a hell of a story. Russell is a former 75th Ranger at 175 Alpha Company, best company in the regiment. No argument there, I don't think, from anybody. He's a Purple Heart recipient because he couldn't IMT very good or whatever happened there, ate a little shrapnel back in the day because he didn't listen to the training. And he's currently an emergency medical traveling doctor. Now, knowing Russ the way I know him from back in the day, me and my wife, Kate, were saying, I can't believe Russ is a ER doctor now, but it's kind of about the same. I can't believe Yuma's a podcast host. So we all take different paths. We got some amazing talent, amazing people that came from the organization that we were in, and we are fortunate to know a lot of them, and I'm fortunate enough to know Russ. We're going to get into all of that. Just deal with him. He's traveling now. He's got a little bit of that shitty, Cookeville, Tennessee hotel Wi-Fi going. You don't get to see his pretty face. Hopefully it'll buff out in here in a minute, but you'll get to hear that. Those of you that know Russ, he has a very familiar voice. I'm going to get off the mic, pass it to him. He can introduce himself and we'll get on with the conversation.
Well, hello, Yuma, and everybody out there that's listening to the podcast. So yeah, as Yuma said, I'm an ER doctor now. I'm board certified emergency medicine physician. And I do travel around the U.S. and work at a couple different spots where they need me. And usually it's a rough spot. Usually it's a spot that doesn't have too much coverage, or they need a dock, or they're down a couple of docks. And so they bring you over there, and you take a healthy beating for however long the shift is, and take care of as many people as you can, and then you move on. And that's my current role with that. But yeah, I remember the Yuma Barnett from back in, there was a 2000 number in there, and way before all of this. Hey, I've got this big rank now, Yuma Barnett, because we met pretty much at the barracks at around October of 2001. That was it.
Yeah.
Because that's when I came to battalion. I was there October 27th. And actually, you were probably one of the first faces I saw, because your room was on the level when we pulled up that I was getting smoked outside it.
Uh, oh, that's funny. Yeah, that's yeah, it takes us back. I can't. So you came in right after 9/11, is that right? You just showed up to regiment right after?
No, no. My scoop was I was I was in Georgia for basic um, in April. So I was coming down the pipeline to make it to battalion. So infantry, 14 weeks, right
Yeah, yeah.
there, Fort Benning. And then there was a bit of a lag for us in between the end of basic training and airborne, because they filled all the spots. And so they pushed us back, all of the infantry guys that had a airborne slot. We stayed in some barracks for like 2.5 weeks, which basically mean they had to babysit us for
Oh
two
yeah.
and a half weeks. And we figured out ways to bring in beer and dip. And that whole barracks was just a shenanigan piece of crap that some poor pogue had to watch. Just a bunch of idiots do the most stupid and heinous things. And we'd sneak out every weekend and have people fake our names for roll call and stuff like that. It was awesome.
Oh, that is funny. That is funny. So we're gonna kind of get into all that, because I like everybody I have on the show. They have very humble introductions of themselves when they've done some of the things that you've done and stuff. And I think that's what makes the community as a whole as awesome. But it's my job to dig all these stories out of you here, and we'll start with the question I ask everybody to kick it off. The Leading with Vulnerability podcast is, I'd be like, what's your definition of vulnerability?
I kind of thought about this for quite some time. It's great. It's a great word. It's a great statement. I think it's allowing yourself to understand you're an idiot. You should be an idiot because you don't know it all. And you're not going to know it all, but you're going to try to be humble in your own way to figure out how you can allow yourself to absorb something completely uncharacteristic. You're vulnerable by doing this podcast, because this is an untouched area for a lot of the world. And I became very vulnerable a long time ago as a father, certainly as an ER physician, for exactly the reasons that you said. Nobody saw me becoming a physician, let alone an ER physician in my future. And without being vulnerable to the idea that this could happen, I could make this, I would never be where I am today.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I love that. I think, yeah, vulnerability is kind of the key a lot of times to unlocking the next greatest version of yourself. Because I'm sure you had to be vulnerable a few times walking into some of those classes when you're a pre-med student, fresh out of the army, doing all that stuff. It takes a little bit of vulnerability to take that first step. And I love that definition. So with that, let's go way back. You came from Utah, Utah boy. Um, Why'd you choose the Army? Why'd you choose the 75th? What was kind of your Army 75th origin story, if you will?
So the Army was kind of a funny situation. Coming out of high school in Utah, northern Utah, I was a plumber. As soon as I got out of high school, I was an apprentice plumber. My buddy's father owned the company, and it was a very large mechanical company. So they did plumbing and they did a lot of other jobs. They would do multi-million-dollar jobs. And we actually ended up right before I went into the Army, we built the Olympic skating oval in Kearns, Utah, that was used for the Olympics back way back in 2002. And I saw myself in the year 2000, right after I graduated, kind of saying, hey, plumbing is good. I can make a living off of this. But there was something else that I had to do. And I flirted with coming into the Army a little bit. And then I got linked up with a girl. And in Utah, as a Mormon boy, you decided that a girl was very, very important at the age of 18, and you're pretty much primed to get married. So we were making moves for that, and it did not turn out to matriculate to marriage. Thank the Lord, because now life is forever exactly the way it was supposed to be because of that decision. But the long and short is I kind of stumbled into a recruiter's office because I was like, yeah, I need to get out of Utah. I don't want to be a plumber for my whole life. And lo and behold, the first place I went to was an Air Force recruiting office. And I ran into this gal, and she was just this quirky gal. She was wearing her little Air Force get up, her blues. And I think at the time they wore a skirt. And she was just like, yeah, you're going to have to come into my office and take this examination. So I went in, and here I am, fresh off the street. I'm a young plumber. In high school, I really did not push myself academically to just excel. And I go in there, I take an exam, and then I left there kind of feeling like, wow, I just got plucked into an office. I took an exam. I was not very impressed. And then it was kind of like the options for me in the Air Force very much so tunneled into not things that I was pumped up about. Nor did she talk to me about special operations and what I came to know of what I would have loved to have done in the Air Force, which would have kind of pushed me exactly on this path. But that's another story. So then I walk out of the recruiting office, and the guy's sitting there smoking a menthol Marlboro cigarette. And it's a Army recruiter with his cap off, just very nonchalant, chill. Hey, what'd that chick tell you in there? And that's exactly the way he approached me. He's like, get in here, let me show you some stuff. So I went into his office, and he's like, this is the type of guy you want to be. And he puts on a Ranger video. And I was like, okay, this is a fantastic video. And it's dudes in there, and they're in their booty caps, and they're fully kitted, and they're going through, they've got the Skedco, I'm sorry, the boats. I'm blanking on the boats. What are they called? Zodiacs, yeah. So they're hanging off Zodiacs, they're jumping out of airplanes, they're fast roping out of helicopters, they're doing airfield seizures, they're camoed up. And I was like, that's fucking fantastic. That would be incredible. Yes. And so I literally, that's kind of the way that I got sucked in, was just by a video and some dude smoking cigarette outside of the recruiting office. And then Ranger, like that's what I wanted in my contract. And it happened when they ultimately said, okay, what do you want infantry? And I was like, well, do you have Ranger? They're like, well, we do. And they walked me through it. And the long and short is it lined everything up. So you got infantry, airborne, and Ranger all in one stick. And that was in your contract. So pending that you did pass the qualifications, you're in. And then and then the rest was just me going through the crap that you went through long ago, that we all went through long ago. Airborne school was hilarious because after basic, right, we ship into Georgia in April, and April in Georgia, I'd never been in humidity other than one other time in my life. And I was like, what in the flip is going on here? It's so hot. I'm sweating all day long. Like, we got off the bus in Georgia, down there at Fort Benning, and they put you in the barracks, and there's no AC in those, like, the infantry holding barracks. And then they don't let you sleep. You're sweating your butt off the entire night. They're yelling at you the entire evening. Then you get like 85 different immunization shots. They throw you into a uniform, and you're off and running, sweating your nuts off the entire time. So much perspiration. It's amazing.
Yep. Yeah, I remember my first time in Georgia trying to figure out what the hell's going on with all the sweating, right?
Yeah, because you came from the Mountain West, the same as me. And so you just sweat and sweat and sweat.
Yeah.
And then so our drill sergeant was ex CAG, and that dude could freaking run like grease lightning. So I literally had a 5 25-minute mile by the end of basic training because of him. I've never been able to run anywhere close to that. We could run like the wind because of him. So airborne school, of course, was a
Joke.
joke. We'd see how drunk we could get the night before. It was dollar pitcher night most times at that little bowling alley that's right next to it. So we would go and drink like two pitchers apiece, pissing all over each other drunk, and then go to formation the next day stumbling and run the airborne shuffle and just laugh at everybody else because we're just cruising through it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That's so early 2000s as well. And if you don't know Russ Evans, he's not a little guy. So for this big, massive a man to be running sub 6 minute miles, that's kind of scary. Yeah, coming towards you. I'm sure. I'm sure. Um, we're going to dig into a little bit more of the 75th stuff, but I'd just be curious because you have a sports background. You played football, you wrestled, and I always thought, as my time in the army, as I went along, if I had somebody come into the platoon, a new guy that we were kind of doing, the drafting, we're drafting somebody. First question is like, where are you from? Second question is like, what sports did you play? And if they were wrestlers, football players, or they're country kids or blue collar plumber type kids, those are the ones I took every time because they just understood the value of hard work. Not necessarily, you didn't have to know everything, but if you knew you worked, you put in work, you're going to be successful. And I had great success with those guys. I watch my son wrestle now, and I just see the resilience and the determination and everything that goes along with that sport. So as you're going through, Army basic training, 75th, RIP was a little bit rough back in the day, a little rough around the collar compared to what it is now. Did that sports background help you kind of push through that and look at some of this and go, this isn't really that hard?
Easily, easily. I would say less football for me because I just don't think that I was into football nearly as much. And part of that was because I was an idiot and I picked the wrong position. So I'll paint you a better picture. You said big guy now. I am bigger than I've ever been in my entire life. But when I was in high school, I was a skinny kid. I wrestled at 152 my junior year. Um, and so to get to 152 football season, I was at 175. I had to suck down 20 pounds. So I'll give you wrestling season is essentially the end of winter. Your first tournament is usually around Thanksgiving. And then you start coming into more tournaments around December. And then it is go time as soon as January hits, you are trying to crush everybody. So I am sucking weight the whole time. So I'm putting on my trash bag, 6 layers of sweats. It's Utah. It just dumped a half a foot of snow in the valley, and I'm outside running for about 3 to 5 miles just so I could sweat off another pound and a half, starving my brains off. And that mentality was just like embedded into me because my brother was a great example. But versus football was throwing on pads, doing two-a-days, and at Utah desert heat when it's 95 outside, you're out there crushing it. So I think football played a definite role. I just wasn't pumped up about it. Wrestling was easily the most relentless sport for me that really taught me the grit that propelled me into a position where once you're looking at how sucky you look and how sucky you feel, you're like, yeah, I can keep doing this.
Yeah.
Let's just keep rocking out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it's twofold there. It's for somebody who's listening right now that thinks contemplating joining the military, contemplating joining SOF. If you have a deep sports background, wrestling, track, and you worked at it, the army's not going to be hard for you, right? So don't ever go into the army thinking it's going to be difficult because of the background you have, especially wrestling. They're going to feed you more in the army, right, to try to build you up. So for anybody listening, if you're thinking about joining the military, don't get shied away because of the physical. You think it's too physical. It's definitely not. And I had similar experience. I grew up on a ranch. When I joined the army, basic training, getting up early, doing that doesn't bother me. Basic was kind of a joke. Got to RIP, I could see things had changed a little bit. There was a different class of people, instructing me, a different mentality, a different mindset. And I felt more like I was back in my, sports days around high performers. And then I got to 175 and things really changed, right? So there are some bad dudes walking those hallways in the barracks at 175. And I just kind of like to know your perspective going through that same process. What was it like when you finally got to 175 and got to meet some of those guys, the team leaders, the squad leaders, and the people that were there. Did you have like kind of an oh shit moment? Because that was the first time I was ever kind of like, I don't know if I belong here. I think I do, but this is a little bit wild. But then, once you get into it, it was amazing. What was your experience like?
I think you walked us through the chronologically exactly how it went for me. Uh, Basic training, really a joke, other than I learned how to very much so sprint quickly. Um, Airborne school, I could see how drunk I could get before I worked out because we were in such good shape. RIP was a whole new category. It's like you looked at some of these, I would easily say chiseled guys, and they were pumped, like they were ready to rock, and they'd stick some RRD guys in there to kind of take you guys out and do your ruck runs and stuff like that. So the mentality, the professionalism, the way that they looked, the way they carried themselves, totally different. So running into 1276 West, let me just tell you, that first day, I knew I was going to get smoked. I knew I was going to get tore up, but you didn't really understand what the purpose was. You know what I mean? Because you've just gone through training thus far. It didn't mean much to you other than I'm going to get ready for whatever's coming. And then when you get into training mode, and again, most of these guys had never deployed at that point. Look, September 11th had happened. We knew the shit was about to go down. And we also knew that right then at that time, when I stepped foot on a 1276 West in Savannah, that we're going to go overseas. 375 is there. They're doing their business. They had already jumped in. So we knew that the stakes were higher. And I would say, though, the date that I came in with that mentality, shit changed very quickly. You looked at each other differently. You knew that there was a mission ahead of you. And I think that all those insanely amazing professionals that we walked into and some shitbirds understood that the mission had changed very quickly. Um, and so the important thing was is that yes, I had an oh shit moment many a times, but I didn't understand why until you really started to get down to the root of how important it was to have oh shit moments back in the rear. And that way, when you're up front, that it's not nearly as big of an oh shit moment anymore.
Yeah.
And dude, we got smoked with our feet hanging off of the washer and dryer in those barracks. We had to come down to your floor on the first floor, and every fucking time you guys would zip tie our ass or do something like that, and then carry us back upstairs and throw it. Luckily, thank God, I never got zip tied. Never, never, never. The banter between first platoon and third platoon, may it forever reign. Freaking outstanding shit. There were some oh shit moments when I was talking with Sergeant Cannon at the time when he would chew my ass. He fucking hated me, man, and he wanted to make my life hell. And you guys had Polson at that time. Wow, his Polson changed, and he fucking hated everybody.
Yeah.
But all of you guys in first platoon always had a banter against third platoon, and it was rivalry craziness. I love all the people in second platoon. I think they're all great. I think the banter between first and third might have been a little thicker when we were in. But you knew when you ran into all those guys, when they called for people, give me 3 Rangers, and you're hauling ass down a hallway, and you know that you're about to meet up with a first platoon guy on that particular detail, you hammered the shit out of people so you could get there, just so you could fuck with each other.
Yep. Oh, yeah, that's so true. Throughout my career, when I've talked to civilians or former people, I've had the question, what was it like? There was a rivalry between ACO and CCO or whatever. And I'm like, well, it's sort of you do competition banner day or something, but the real rivalries were inter-company, right? Second platoon were kind of a bunch of weirdos. They were off doing second platoon things, but first and third, I think we were very similar in our cultures, and it was just, I mean, sometimes it was brutal. I mean,
Yeah.
people going to
Oh, yeah.
people going to sick call type brutal, because of torn ligaments and knees and stuff. So I wouldn't trade it for the world though.
No, we beat the shit out of each other, dude. It was crazy. We would kick each other off of the rope. You remember the climbing rope right outside
Oh yeah.
of our ACO barracks? We would kick each other off of that damn thing just because I needed to climb the rope first.
Yep.
Because if I don't climb the rope first and I don't tackle you and try to choke you out, then I'm going to have to do more push-ups or more exercises for the next 2 hours just because.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were there, we weren't there long. an OEF one. It's we get selected. We're going over. We go to Bagram. December 28th. I think we left the states and headed over. That was a crazy time. We didn't know what to expect, right? I remember flying into Bagram. We thought it was on, like we were going to come running off the ramps into a blaze of glory. We just didn't know. Looking back on it years later, we just didn't. We were still trying to get our feet under us to figure out what the hell our place was in this war. And eventually, we found it. But we did lose three great Americans from the company, Matt, Mark, and Brad. That kind of set a new tone, I think, in the company as a culture, in the regiment. Like, this shit's real. I mean, we lost Stone Cipher and Edmonds on originally from 375, but when we lost them, in combat, the biggest, gunfight since Mogadishu, kind of just like, oh shit, boys, this isn't we're gonna be doing this for a while. I think we're gonna be rotating in and out of here. What is your when you reflect on OEF one, what comes to mind?
Masira Island.
Yeah, that's
Which was
right.
amazing. Oman was awesome. So we split, right? You guys took off at a different time from first platoon, and we were on the Masira Island. And dude, beautiful beach, jellyfish from hell, full of sharks, and then just the most odd colored eggs. I swear to God, their fried eggs were green there.
That's right.
So then propel forward. I remember when you stepped foot in country, we flew into Kandahar, and the first landing, you'll never forget the first landing. A combat landing is so starkly different than anything else. You smack the bejesus out of the ground. Like, that plane comes down, boom, and it's chock full of people, and you smash the tarmac. And as soon as you come off, you feel that first, oh shit, we're in country. And you're fully kitted up, you're ready to rock. And I think that it was that moment that where you started to smell the smells and see the sights, and you saw the terrain around you, that it was like, oh, it's go time now. So fast forward through that, we made a gym, right? We took the CBs that were working with us and some of the engineers, and we concocted gym equipment. So we went over to the broken down Russian helicopters and some of the other things. We took off axles and we made it into gym equipment, benching equipment, barbells, dumbbells, stuff like that, whatever we could utilize. And Bela, we'll never forget Bela out there, just totally coaching everybody of how to use this equipment and how to lift appropriately. And then there were times that we had to separate because third platoon and first platoon were getting on each other's asses about, no, you're taking up too much time with the gym equipment. But yeah, we all went out there and we were lifting essentially truck axles.
Yep.
Benching those on a bench that we made that's literally rickety back and forth, made out of wood, just so we could get a workout on. We did suntan maintenance when we didn't have to go out on a mission. And then there was Lewandowski. I don't know if you remember Lewandowski. He was my first gunner. My first deployment. I'm a ammo bearer for a machine gun team, and I essentially got into a machine gun team for the reason that you said initially, which is I was a bigger guy. And at that time, I had put on a little bit more weight coming into battalion. I'd been there for a couple months, and all we did was lift and eat and lift and eat. So I'm now about 205 pounds. The first mission we go on to, they say, okay, Pieper, you're going to get the shit. You're going to get fucked up. You're going to take an assault pack. Here's 1,200 rounds of 7.62. You're going to carry in an assault pack. Then you carry the barrels in the tripod. And you're going with Lewandowski. Roger that. I'm like, fucking A, let's roll. 1,200 rounds is ridiculous. It's freaking ridiculous. So it's about 8 pounds per 100 rounds of 7.62. Plus, I'm carrying the other rounds on my kit and all my 5.56 frags, my medic kit. I look like a big pile of shit. I could barely carry the freaking assault pack. We go on to this 53, which thank God they're no longer using 53s because that thing tried to kill us as well. And then we go out to an objective. That objective, that whole situation gets screwed up. We end up staying out there with a sniper team and our platoon sergeant in the middle of nowhere after this hit went down because our helicopter broke. The hydraulics went out on it when we landed. We're laying in the middle of a field after a hit where there's known and likely enemy. And freezing our asses off. And we didn't pack anything. We got our BDU tops on, regular stuff. It is 40 degrees outside. We're up in the mountains. Luckily, it hadn't snowed, but we're essentially in a cornfield laying next to each other behind some cover, nut to butt, freezing our asses off. So then we had to run over. They did a humanitarian drop, and it's closer to the objective where this hit went down, where everybody else had exfilled. They're gone. They're back at home sleeping, and we're still out there laying in the field. They had dropped a pallet of coats, winter coats. So there I was, me and the sniper scout had to sprint over this pallet, steal 2 coats, and run back over to everybody else so we could kind of huddle up together with these 2 jackets around us. Finally, we exfilled out of there. But then I'll fast forward to something you and I talked about, and that's that this is where the shit got real. Is you mentioned, the passing of our buddies, and man, I can remember seriously like it was yesterday. Mark Anderson was a big guy, just a big teddy bear of an amazing person. I didn't know him very well, but his reputation preceded him. Just like him and Vela's reputation was very, very natural. Their old football days, the big old grunt looking sons of guns. But Mark was a big teddy bear, and he was talking to me. He's almost out. He was ready to be out of the military. He was, prior to this, I want to say he was a math teacher. And so we were just shooting the breeze about, hey, I'm probably going to go back to Florida. I'm going to start teaching again. I've done my 4 years and I'm all done. And just a very awesome conversation about, hey, we're in the shit. Afghanistan's a shithole, and this is what I'm going to do when I get out. Those candid conversations that you had. And then literally he got on a bird right after that. You guys went up to Bagram, and then you shipped out from Bagram for that QRF mission, I'm sorry, not the QRF, for the actual mission. And then just like that, we're watching on Predator drone film, our buddies get smoked. And so that was the OEF. That's the part that's just set in stone in our hearts that we can't get rid of.
Yeah. Yeah, that was rough. And think about those guys, all the time, especially when March starts around about this time of year. You start thinking back to that first trip, because it's just, it's part of our lives until we're gone. But I want to cover, it's funny you brought up some things never change, right? I did 16 rotations. It's like the first thing you land on the ground, it's ammo, gym, MWR. That's like priorities of work, right? And there's somebody out there trying to find out where we're going to load our magazines, where's the frags, where's the explosive bunker, where's the gym, how's the gym, how are we going to set it up, how are we going to change it, and then 3, who's setting up the Xboxes so we can entertain ourselves and play Halo. And I don't think that has changed to this day, even though I'm a couple years removed. So you ended up doing 4 rotations. Your 4th one, when it comes with a name, right, and quotes, Bloody Thursday, there's some good there, there's some bad there, obviously. I was the rear D in COIC, I think, during that trip when you guys went over. So that's the day you got wounded, correct?
Yeah.
It
was May 20th. May 20th.
Yeah, take it from there. Tell us a little bit. What was Bloody Thursday? What happened? What's the story there?
Yeah. The reason they call them Bloody Thursdays, plural, is there was sequential. Every Thursday there was something that went down. So I'll give you the first one. The first one was the biggest ambush that I've ever been in my life. We estimate that they had approximately 50 dudes. There was probably only about 20 something of us at our particular house that we had commandeered this entire area. And so that one went off that we were ambushed at dawn, and they were shooting RPGs at us. They mortared us. They had a dish kit set up. They had a lot of small arms fire. And luckily, of all that, they shot up our Humvees. They had shot the crap out of all the houses. The only 2 people that got wounded was Gurley and Dickie. So do you remember Dickie?
Yeah.
So Dickie took shrapnel in his ass, and then Gurley got his finger cut by some shrapnel as well. So that was it. Like, of all the biggest ambush that I've ever been in my entire life, that looked like the 4th of July coming towards your face. And Dickie and Gurley got hit. So fast forward 1 week later, we're exfilling out of that particular area, and we were right on the border of Pakistan. And there is nothing but liars out there. I'm sorry, I'm so jaded towards that particular area, but we are coming back from there, and every day we were getting shot at. But then Thursday rolls around and we're exfilling. So we're taking all the Humvees, all of our equipment, leaving that objective. And it's the middle of the night. We're going through a wood bazaar, and they RPG'd us at about the middle of essentially the set of Humvees that we had together there. And a lot of our guys got hit that day. So that was when Wiggins, he ended up getting hit with shrapnel in the back of his skull. He ended up getting intubated in the field. You had Yeager, who got absolutely peppered with that shrapnel. You had Hurst, who lost his eye and stayed in. And then you had Sellers, who took shrapnel to his thigh, and everybody else was whole. Just that one Jeep was their target, and they RPG'd it. And then as soon as they RPG, they bailed out. So that was multiple casualties at one time for that particular hit. And then the Thursday after that was when I got hit. Simple mission, nothing too crazy. It's like, hey, known and likely, this is what they look like. This is what you have to drive through. This particular mission, we're on Humvees the whole time, just driving to the objective. And we pull up, and it was our other squad that goes up to put the demo on the door. They blow the door, they go in. And it's a freaking, it was a nursery. It was women and children, chock full. So we're like, what the heck? This ain't right. Something's not, it doesn't smell right. Well, it just so happens that we set up our sectors of fire, and they had already hit the objective that the GPS coordinates said that we should go to. And Dingman, he's on our 50 cal. And the 50 cal got a thermal sight on the top of it, and he's scanning his sectors, watching for squirters, watching for people. And he looks at a rooftop and he's like, hey, Sark, I've got 3 people on this rooftop. And it looks like one of them is holding up kind of like a cell phone to his ear. And you and I both know, ain't nobody got a cell phone out there unless they got money. And money is either dirty or it's clean, one of the two out there. So he got called into, why am I blanking on his name? Anyhow, he gets called into our platoon sergeant, and he essentially says, hey, we're going to hit this spot. This might be the one instead. So we stack on the door. Whitfield has his fire team, and then I'm in my fire team, the second team in the stack. And let me tell you, that was my first mission as a fire team leader, my very first. So the irony that this is about to happen for my first mission as a fire team leader is crazy. So we go to sack on the door, and it's a side door. And to set this up, the compound is about a 9-foot wall surrounding the whole thing. There's a kind of a front door where you pull cars into, so it's wide enough for cars and doors to swing in and out. And then there's a side door that's just like a door that you would open up. It's metal, and that's the one that we're going to infiltrate through. As soon as we go up there, we're stacked up. We do the tap. We're ready to go. Sergeant Tony comes up and he boots the door, and it's just and doesn't move. So our element of surprise is totally gone. First of all, they had already seen us coming. They heard us blow up a door next door in the compound over. And so Seth goes up to the door because Tony tried to boot it sequentially. Bam, bam, bam. So you just hear this hammering, this metal door. All of us in the second, right behind Whitfield's team are like, shit, we're in the stack and this is so freaking loud. So Whitfield finally shoulders it. Turns out they stacked a wood bed frame against the door. And so as soon as Whitfield puts his shoulder into the door, it starts swinging open a little bit, and then a grenade goes right off. So Whitfield, actually, there was like 3 things that happened. Whitfield shot 2 shots, assuming as he comes in to the compound. And there's 2 guys to the front, AKs, just spraying, not even looking down the dang barrel, just spraying the rounds. And then there's a lady kind of off to a 45-degree angle near the house, and she's got a whole stack of grenades next to her, and she's just chucking them right at the door. So Whitfield gets hit with a little bit of grenade shrapnel to his arm, and then the guys that were shooting the AKs that hit in the wall right next to his night vision eye. So now he's blind. He kind of hits off to the side because the grenade went off. Diaz gets hit all up his arm. He was his saw gunner. He takes shrapnel all up his arm on his firing arm. And then Swindle was aired into the stack. and he's in the doorway. And Swindle, we're always going to make fun of Swindle, Squirtle, as we called him. It was that moment where everything is going so slow and yet so fast. So I shoulder Swindle out of the doorway, and I'm bringing up my rifle. And right as I did that, and I'm squeezing the trigger, I can see those two guys. I can see their teeth with the flash of the every time they're shooting a round out of their AK and they're shooting it on auto. I can see their teeth. So I'm squeezing around, and as soon as I did that, I was like, "Oh shit!" My leg gets flung back. And you're acknowledging that, hey, something just moved my body that doesn't really, I don't know how the hell that happened. Because at that time, I'm 245 pounds. So I'm just a big lug of a son of a bitch. And I get flung off to the side when I got hit with this round. I was stepping forward and I get flung, and I could see a couple of the AK rounds kick over my head. And then you hear Tony in the backdrop because he's watching this happen. He's like, "Get the fuck out of there. Everybody get the fuck out." So Whitfield and Diaz peeled off to one side of the door. And then I look down the adobe wall, or that big compound wall, and see the other fire team that's waiting to come in as soon as we breach. And I just ran down there. But when I'm running, I'm like, what the hell just happened? My leg is not working. Yandel was he was a saw gunner for another fire team. He says to me, "This is what you said, Pieper. You were screaming, 'Fuck, man, that hurts way worse than it looks like in the movies.'" And I do not recollect this shit at all. So Yandel's probably blowing smoke, but whatever. Go over there. Wojo is sitting on the other side of the wall. And I said, "Hey, Wojo," because we were kind of down behind him, or behind the wall. Everybody's coming out of the objective. We're going to reformulate the plan to go in somewhere else, breach somewhere else. Meanwhile, I was like, "Wojo, pretty sure I got shot, dude." And he checks me out, and my pants are now soaked with blood. My leg's getting really hot. I still don't really necessarily feel pain, but I acknowledge that it feels like somebody stuck a broomstick in my leg, broke it off, lit it on fire. So really fast sensations of pressure and heat, and I'm bleeding down my pant leg. So he checks it out. He's like, "Oh shit, yeah, you did." And he throws a tourniquet on my leg. And that's when we had the ratchet tourniquets. And if you've never had a ratchet tourniquet put on your fucking leg, that shit is miserable because they crank it down. And I'm not a tie down at a truck, right? This is my leg, for Christ's sake. So puts this ratchet tourniquet on, hurts like crazy, stabs me in the other leg with a 10 shot of auto injector morphine. And then meanwhile, while this is all going down, the lady is now lobbing grenades over the wall, and they're landing right in front of us. So then we are lobbing grenades back over the wall, catching some of hers and lobbing them back. And there's still grenades going off in front of us. Right when there was a little bit of a break in the action, because we had lobbed about 6 in a row, our medic comes over the berm, slides and eats shit in the middle of them, and because they irrigate their fields, their cornfields, slides out, smashes right down, and then finally gets up to there. And he was pretty rattled at the time because, of course, he just saw a couple frags go off in front of him. And he's like, "All right, what's going on? What's the casualty count?" So he looks at me and he's like, "Oh shit, you got a tourniquet on?" And he's telling Wojo, "Good job." And he's like, "Okay, where's the exit wound?" And Wojo's like, "Huh?" So the medic looks at my leg, and Wojo slides his fingers behind my leg, and at my thigh, he puts 2 of his fingers inside of my leg. That's the exit wound. And I'm like, "Motherfucker," because now it's really starting to hurt. Morphine has not kicked in. And so now they take off the tourniquet, slide it up my thigh, and then ratchet that sucker back down. Now I'm pissed. Now it's on fire. It's killing me. It's throbbing. It feels like hell. The doc or the medic gives me another 10 shot of morphine, a fentanyl lollipop, and then I'm 245. Everybody around me is 160 to 205 pounds, and I can't move my leg. So a 245-pound dude with body armor, his rifle, and all the rest of my crap, I'm just shy of the 300. And I've got these dudes that are just screaming at me, "You fat fuck, why the hell do I have to carry you?" And it's an irrigated field, and so we're sliding out. I've got one leg. We finally get on the other side of the berm. Again, frags going off. Yandel gets hit in the back of his head with grenade shrapnel because the lady fragged us. And finally, Doc Yoakum, he says to me, He's like, all right, dude, lay down. I got to put an IV in your arm. And I'm like, what? Because now all the meds that they gave to me are now just starting to kick in simultaneously. I'm like, what? Holy shit. Fuck you, dog. Give me my rifle. I'm going back after these guys. This is bullshit. And then me and Whitfield and Diaz all got exfil. We peeled out of the objective, kind of recouped, ended up just blowing the bejesus out of that compound later on. Took out the target. It was a good, successful mission. Found out that they were bad guys. They had a bunch of mines in there, a bunch of intel. But meanwhile, we get flown over to the forward operating base where we were staying, and then the recovery began.
Whew, that's a hell of a story. That's a hell of a couple Thursdays there. You get
Yeah, well, there was another Thursday right after that they did another mission. Luckily, nobody got hurt, but it went down. Armageddon.
oh man, that's wild. They're out there trying to get their jihad on before Man Love Friday. I'll just say it. That's what they're doing.
That's exactly right. Man Love Friday.
So you did 4 trips total. You come back, you decide, you're going to transition from service. I remember it pretty vividly. Me and you, right before you transitioned, I think we had like a conversation on the rooftop, out on the balcony on the second floor there. I remember just chatting with you for a while before you did this. It was when you got back and you were healed up and about to start transitioning. And we talked a little about what you were going to do and what was your transition like? Did you know you were going to go into medicine? Like, was that the plan coming out? I don't really remember. How was your transition process? What did you learn through it? What advice would you give to somebody about to enter that themselves?
At Ranger Battalion, you get passion for stuff. Like you figure out what you're really passionate about. And then when you go overseas, you get even more passion for stuff because then when you're actually back in the rear, and you have time to decompress, you like put a lot of energy into things. And so this is prior to me being a father. And one of the things I put a ton of passion into is we had the opportunity to go to an EMT school. We were in a combat EMT school. So we did this civilian EMT program when I think I just finished Ranger school. It was before our 3rd deployment, and I loved it. I thought it was awesome. And I gave my heart to all the ambulance personnel, our first responders and ambulance personnel, because they have an insanely tough job. But while I was rolling around on the ambulances with them, I wasn't like, this is what I want to do. And then we would go, you would do rotations in the ER. And here I am once again, bald headed. I'm 240 pounds, bald headed stat guy wearing a black polo shirt and like these black cargo pants. I look like a security guard instead of what I was there for, which is an EMT guy. And here was this setup, right? You know what an ER kind of looks like. Every ER has this chaos to it to a certain degree. And there are times when it's insanely chaotic. And there's this nursing assistant running in there, or they call them ED techs now, running into the room and doing all this stuff because they just had a motor vehicle crash. This guy's scalp got peeled open because he got ejected from the car. And they're starting to work and stabilize and make sure that he doesn't freak out because he's intoxicated. He's got a cervical collar around his neck. So that was their task. And then you see the nurse come in there simultaneously trying to start an IV and do their tasking, right? So it was a task-oriented situation where everybody played their own little role. And then you see the ER doctor and they walk in and they're like, they do this very rapid, poised, specific assessment. And then after this assessment, they say, okay, this is, you do this, you do this, you do this. Complete organization, total calmness, and off and run, then it went. And you have time to reflect when you leave that and you're like, wow, that's amazing. That's awesome. So I finished that course, and I got soldier of the course. They actually give out what's called the Bradley S. Cross Award for that course when you take it from the EMT, from that private EMT group. And I won that award, even though like my national registry score wasn't top of the class, just because I worked my ass off. I loved it. I was pumped. So fast forward, I get out of the military. I already knew like I'm going to be a doctor, and I just said I want to be a doctor because everything that I saw was exactly what I want to be. It took me 3 years for undergrad because I just wanted to get it over with. So it was like, all year long. I never skipped summers. So it was just spring semester, summer semester, fall semester, loaded up with credits. I had met my wife, Angie, on a cruise ship in the Bahamas before that. So her and I met around January of 2004. We started dating thereafter. Sorry to everybody that affected, because I know that there were a few people that was not very nice to. People that your wife knew and that you knew. And the unfortunate truth about that whole scenario is that is not a very awesome part of my life, but it is there. But then we had our first child, Jet, and he was born my freshman year of college. So I would go to school at 8 in the morning after working 12 hours from 7 p.m. till 7 a.m. as an ICU nursing assistant. So I'd work a 12-hour shift. I'd get off shift. I'd drive to school. I would do about 4 to 7 hours of college work, including studying and everything else, drinking my coffee as much as I possibly could. And then I would go home. I would sleep for 2 hours. I would see Jet and I would see Angie, and then I would go back to work. And luckily, you only work for usually 3 nights a week. And then the rest of that was just like family time, trying to recoup from sleep loss in school. Second child, Jameson, he comes my junior year of college, and I'm already getting ready to finish up. So I graduated in December of 08 from University of South Florida. And then it's med school time. So my scores, the MCAT, just to give all of the people out there an appreciation, I'm scholastically not awesome. My GPA is fine, but when I take these big tests, I don't do well. It's not an anxiety thing. It's just flat out me second guessing the bejesus out of everything that's out there. So the MCAT is the gold standard to get into med school. And I took it the first time and let's just say I got a 50%. Let's call it that, because it was not very good. And obviously, you know that you don't want to call your doctor somebody who got a 50% on their exam, but yet at the same time, that's reality. It was. And so I'm starting to look at med school. I'm starting to throw out my applications. And my brother at the time is a resident in family medicine, and he's a part of this American College of Osteopathic Family Practitioners. And he went to a conference in Orlando, and I was living in Tampa because that's where I went to USF for undergrad. And he introduced me to the new dean of Rocky Vista University College of Osteopathic Medicine. So I meet this dean, I shake hands with him, and I told him, he's like, yeah, hopefully we'll get you to come to the university. So I said, well, that'd be great. Let me just tell you a little story. I'm getting ready to take my MCAT. So I had not taken the MCAT. He's like, well, I tell you what, as soon as you take the MCAT, you call me. I called him the day I got my scores. And I said, sir, I didn't do so well. And I admit that. And I apologize that's when I have to come with you. And he goes, well, tell me your scores. And I said, well, I got this score here, this score. He says, okay, I want you to retake it. And when you retake it, you need to improve this one thing, because when I put you into my medical school, we're going to just crush you with information. And it's going to be like nothing you've ever experienced in your life. So I said, okay, you got it. 2 months later, took it again, improved by 1 point. 1 point in that exact category. I swear to God, just that. So he said, okay, I promised you an interview. You get an interview, and then it's up to you to prove them on the interview that you have what it takes. So I fly out to Colorado, and I go to the interview, and the interview was fantastic. As you can imagine, on prior service, I got a Purple Heart now. My grades are good, so I'm at least competitive with them. But I walk in there, and the admissions department is like, hey, you're Russell Pieper. Do you have a Purple Heart? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, yeah, we read through your bio. And they call it a CV, right? They call it curriculum vitae. They're like, we read through your curriculum vitae. That is impressive. You were an Eagle Scout when you were a kid. You're a Purple Heart. They're like, all right, let's go sit down and talk. And I sit down with the interview, and the entire thing was about my military service. How did I get a Purple Heart? Why do I want to be a doctor? And that was easy stuff, man. I could glide through that all day long. I wanted to be a doctor because I really want to help people. And actually, at the time, what's really funny, I wanted nothing to do with the civilian people still at that time. I wanted to go in and become a military doctor. because that's who I wanted to serve with. Once again, I wanted to be back into it. The whole time I'm out and I'm doing undergrad, I never wanted to leave. Like I felt like I should go back in because all of my buddies are still back there. It was so much fun. It was a great part of my life. Um, I actually talked with an Air Force recruiter about becoming a PJ during undergrad because I was just kind of going back and forth. But then I told Angie and Jet and Jameson, I was like, oh yeah, the pipeline's like 2 years long for that. And I'll be gone the whole time. They're like, hell no, you're not doing that crap. You're staying here with us. So the interview, I smoked it. And I got 9 days later, I got my acceptance to Rocky Vista University College of Osteopathic Medicine. So there I was in Florida, and we're living close to her parents. She works for her parents, and she's the breadwinner. She's my sugar mama. And we tell her parents, we're like, oh, she's going to be moving to Colorado come this July because I got accepted to med school up there. And so that was that part of my life. That's good old undergrad. And then we go to Colorado med school, freaking gorgeous out there. I'm just north of where you grew up at. Amazing place, amazing university. Med school compared to ranger training, there's physical and mental portions to being a ranger, being it backed, going to ranger school, going to all the different qualification courses. But the mental difficulty of med school is you can't touch it with a 10-foot pole. They throw at you like your stack of books is legitimately it's 4 foot tall, and you're going to start reading, and you need to memorize. Well, you have to memorize the stuff. You don't have a choice because it's people's lives in the future that make the biggest difference. So you transition from taking away lives, and that was your main goal, to saving people's lives. And I just can't tell you the mental fortitude that you take with you from battalion and how that transitions to all the studying, where you think, okay, yeah, I'm gonna kind of take it easy tonight because I've been studying. Well, no, you have an exam the next day, and you've got to read 600 pages, and you just do it. You sleep for 4 hours a night. You drink another Red Bull, and then you go back to studying more. And you kiss your kids, you kiss your wife, you eat dinner with them. You make that nice little 30-minute window for just family, and then you go right back to it.
Yeah.
And that was med school.
Yeah. That's wild. I'm sure, you covered a little bit there, but there's just something about in life about things, good things don't come easy, right? Being a ranger, it's slightly academically challenging, but you build your resiliency on the physical side where, you've been at the range all day, up, day fire, night live fire, go to bed for a minute, you're up and you're doing some sort of movement to contact lane or something. You're building some sort of resilience. And I had to imagine that you just transition it to books now, right? You transition that part of your life to the next part of your life. When I got my undergrad, I just attacked it, right? Kind of like I would attack an objective, and broke it down and had a plan and was okay. Like if I didn't get a lot of rest or I had to stay up late, that was fine because I was used to that. I'd done it for 20 years, So I guess does that kind of the same thing? You just all that resilience, all the selections, all the deployments, the getting shot, all that, you build a lot of personal resilience there. You just transitioned it to a new craft going through med school.
There's still things, you're exactly right. Even to this day, because of course you got to stay up on medical knowledge, you figure out how to pour a lot of time and effort into things. But I mean, so yeah, when you transition into med school is actually, it's crazy how much knowledge you get dumped on. And then you filter that in because now you go and you start doing rotations. And then you have to do a totally different thing where you have to stand in front of a patient and apply all the knowledge that you just obtained. And that's a weird task, especially when you're used to walking into barracks and saying, hey bro, fuck you. How's your morning going? And now you have to totally go into professionalism mode where you're walking in there. Somebody's very, very vulnerable in front of you. They're seeing you because something's going on with their body and you have to figure it out. And people are complex as all get out. So when you say focus, you just take all of that underbelly, that intestinal fortitude, as we like to say it so many times over, and you figure a way to make that objective your only objective at the time. It's a great way to see it one patient at a time, is seeing each patient as an objective that you don't have good intel on, and you just attack it with everything that you got. That's the same way that, Barney, you attack your parenting, uh, the same exact way. You attack this podcast and your new ventures the exact same way. You figure out how to just hone your skills into that moment, even though you have not developed the skills. You will develop them, and you're poised to do it.
That's right. That's right. One thing I kind of like to cover is there's a thought, when somebody's transitioning out of the military, whether it's 4 years, 5 years, or maybe 20 years, there's this thought that you're going to get out and you're going to all of a sudden gain work-life balance, right? It's going to go 9 to 5, depending on what you do. And it might be, but you're probably not going to reach the success that you want to reach in your life being a 9 to 5 type person. Like does it for meat eaters like you and me and the other people in the community. That just doesn't work for us, right? It's it's hard. It's hard to find, reach a level of success that you think you might have and have a perfect work-life balance and make 6 figures a year and do all that. It's just, there's a lot more similarities, I think, than people realize between working hard in the civilian sector and working hard in the military. It's going to take your time, and we all get the same 24 hours. So I just like you to kind of, you're in Cookville, you're away from your family right now, traveling. It's not ideal, but that's part of the profession. Could you just expound on that a little bit? How you try to achieve work-life balance as a traveling ER doctor, and there's no easy path to anything. So when somebody's looking back now saying, I'm going to get out of the army and it's going to be easy, that's not, that's the wrong reason to get out.
Yes, very much so. Wrong reason to get out. The reason why you get out is because you have a new objective. You're focused on that objective, and you have all of the details necessary to get up to it. And you don't have to be perfect along the way on the transition point, because I could have easily came out and done something totally different after I, had a bump in the road with whatever it was and transition to that. But even thus, what my ultimate point of that is to say, yeah, I travel now. I travel now, and when I work usually 12-hour shifts. And when I'm done with my 12-hour shift, um, I'm going back to the hotel. If I'm working out of town, which I work a lot out of town right now, and as soon as I get back to the hotel, the first priority on the way back is I call my wife every single time. Um, and it's pretty sad because me and Angie have an amazing relationship. I always want to hang out with her. Our house is fantastic. Our kids are amazing, even though they're shitheads, but they're amazing. But we always want to be around each other. And so there's not a day that goes by that I'm traveling that I'm like, man, I wish I was home. But we try and get on to FaceTime or something else like that as a part of our family time. And we just try and be in communication with each other with everything, even if something's going on in the ER and I'm on shift, she can text me. I can't always answer at that exact time because I'm usually doing something. But at least she knows that I'm going to get back with her and take care of what needs to be done, whether or not it's with her personally or with the family. But when I'm back at home, it is family time. It's go time, family time. So we figure out some sort of activity to do together. Each one of my boys very different. Jet is applying for the U.S. Naval Academy, and so we're putting everything we can into making sure that he gets things lined up. He is so focused and poised. He's just a brilliant kid, and I'm pretty sure he's going to get in. I pray he gets in. Hopefully, this podcast doesn't come back to haunt me, but needless to say, he's awesome. But we put a lot of effort into that. Jameson is now in the transition point of he wants to get a job and he wants to get his driving permit. And so we got to put time, effort, and all the different driving technique stuff into that. And then Jackson is trying to get his black belt. So each one of them have got stuff that's going on that we have to really hyper focus on to make sure that our kids are getting exactly what they need at the time. So when it's, again, if I'm off work, it's freaking go time. And then at night, Angie and I will sit in front of the television, turn on the fire, sip a couple glasses of wine, shoot the breeze, and she'll tell me about how awful it was during the week, sometimes with the boys, or how amazing it was, just depending on how the week went. But complete decompression. And then a few days are gone, right back to work, right back to a hotel, right back to swinging through it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So as we come in and we land the plane here, or we move to Exville from this podcast, if you could go back, same question again, everybody gets it, and you could look at Private Piper in the face, right? What advice would you give him?
Um, Private Piper, I would 100% say that utilize everything you can to become smarter in so many different things. This podcast is an avenue for people to understand that transition, and then it's your job as a person to learn as much as you can. I will tell you this: the two of us could be bankers, the two of us could be accountants, the two of us could be lawyers, the two of us could be garbage men, and then still have a side hustle where we're creating this X, Y, or Z project that just fulfills our life. Whatever you're passionate about, learn, keep learning, read and reread. Stay off of social media on some aspects because it's going to fill you full of things that are not perfect for you, even though you can utilize it as an avenue to help elevate your life. But if I could tell Private Piper one thing, just learn. Like, take more college credit courses um, in the military that they're going to pay for. Just even if they make no application for your future, because the more knowledge you can obtain as you go through it, the better off you are. Um, Take care of your body, because now that we are in the 40 range, uh, I learned a lot of things about my body that I didn't think that I would learn about at this age. We've seen old people before, Barney, and we looked at them as old, and now we're kind of transitioning into that older parent situation. And we're not old by any stretch of the imagination, but yeah, there's these little nuances. To take care of your body, find a way to always do, no matter what, a little bit of exercise, a lot of mobility, a lot of recovery based stuff, and it will pay in dividends in your future. And then uh, realize this, that your lifestyle of consuming calories, in addition to that, will definitely transform you. I 100% wish that I always grew a garden of some factor, and I always shopped at the grocery store just in the produce aisle, and I really stayed away from the rest of the stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna eat some proteins and stuff like that, but the amount of stupidity of consumption of calories, even to this day, between licorice and chocolate, and I mean, even the occasional Twinkie, it's not a smart move. So figure out a way to apply the knowledge of wanting longevity with your life, quality of life and longevity of life, to prevent chronic disease by just applying those two principles of eat the right thing, make it your lifestyle. And that's pretty much where I would start.
Yeah. Yeah, I love all of that, and I think it's a cliche if I say it is, but it's true. Like, knowledge is power. It really is. And I wish I would have started my journey of lifelong learning and reading and doing some of the more mature things earlier in life instead of reading the back of a Coors Light can. I should have read a couple books by Stephen Covey or something earlier on in my leadership journey. But uh, Ross, I super appreciate you coming on here, taking a moment. I know you're a busy man, flying all over the world, doing great things. I'm always amazed when I get to reconnect with you guys and see what you're doing nowadays. Right, loosely follow everybody on social media, but when you really get to sit down and have a conversation, I mean, I'm just always in awe of the the people that came out of the organizations that we served in. It almost makes me emotional. It really does to see guys like you super successful, and Whitfield, and all these guys I knew from 3 Alpha to then go to 3 Alpha. I mean, it's just amazing the quality of people that came from the 75th Ranger Regiment or SOF as a whole. And that's why it's important, I think, to share these stories, listen to these stories, because somewhere in the barracks right now, there's a knucklehead private who's going to be a ER doctor, right? Someday. And right now he doesn't see it,
Yep.
or she doesn't see it, but it's going to happen. And it's because of stories like this. So thanks for coming on. Everybody out there, thanks for listening. Like, share, subscribe, do all the things I need you to do. And we'll catch everybody on the next episode. Thanks, Russ.
Cheers, buddy.